What happens to sex offenders in prison? AskReddit Part 2.
I would not want to be in prison if I was a convicted sex offender. We often like to think prison guards are moral, ethical people. This isn't the case. I have seen too many prison guards that are lazy, unintelligent, and the furthest thing from being moral. So it sucks if you are a sex offender in prison. I was working at a prison in southern Texas, and one of the inmates was convicted of molesting a 9-year-old girl. One of the guards in the prison had a 9-year-old daughter, and this set something off in him. The guard quietly walked behind the man and knocked him out with a club. Which is bad on its own, but like clockwork, I saw 3 inmates drag him into a cell and pull down his pants, then began raping him. One by one. I can still hear his screams as he woke up mid-rape.
I am a convicted sex offender.
I was convicted of a sexual offense. I'm proud to say I served my time in Gen Pop, and no one figured it out. Not all sexual offenders are bad people. I'm proof of it. Criminals are incredibly smart when it comes to day-to-day life in prison. But I think they are overhyped when it comes to their ability to figure it out. Again, you all think sexual offenders are bad people. They aren't. I am a good person, I have great kids, and an amazing wife. But I made a mistake. And I served my time for it. Stop prosecuting people who don't deserve it.
I can't say they don't deserve it.
So nothing should happen to sex offenders in prison. They are given an out if they need it. When they first come to jail, they are asked if there are any reason they shouldn't be around other inmates. If they tell the truth, they will be put in solitary for their sentences. However, some sick, twisted sex offenders are not that smart. They either lie or think they can explain why they are the way they are. This never works. I've seen some of the worst beatings you can imagine. It's not like a UFC fight. There is no ref to stop the fight when it happens. Imagine a tough fighter gets to keep hitting you while you are unconscious. This will continue until a guard comes by. Can't say they don't deserve it.
They don't care why I did it. Just that I did it.
I thought I could survive Gen Pop. I barely got out to be able to write this. I was convicted of a crime I didn't commit. I did have a bad relationship with my ex. We were always on each other's case about something. I know outside looking in we should have broken up earlier, but sometimes when you are in it, well, you don't see it that way. We were drinking one night and she started on about something. That led her to tell me she was going to sleep with my friends. I threw my beer bottle at the wall and it broke open, creating quite the mess. She then came over and began to hit me. I sat there and took it. I put my hands up and took it. She kept hitting me over and over. I have never hit her, but this day she was really crazy. She picked up the lamp I was sitting beside and hit me with it. It broke over my arm. She then went into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. She began to pace back and forth, screaming she was going to kill me. She couldn't take it anymore. I called the cops. While the cops were on their way here, she took some of the broken glass and began to cut her face. The second the cops showed up, she started to cry and she told them I threw the bottle at her. She was scared for her life, etc. The cops arrested me and I went to jail. Jail was a nightmare. You fear for your life. I didn't belong there. The fact that I was there added to my aggression, and this is why I spent more time in jail. Some guy took my bedding and it upset me. So we ended up fighting, and then when I went to court they used this against me. They made me seem like I was aggressive and abusive and a danger to society. This mistake in staying in this relationship cost me 17 years of my life. Trust me. I hope she rots in hell. I never put my hands on her and yet I get tried for it. Ladies, let me ask you, how can you do this to someone and still sleep at night?
Addicted to underage boys.
One of the women I was in prison with was a sex offender. We all hated her, but as women we tend to be a bit more considerate than the men. Or at least, up to some point. She seemed very honest with what she had done. It was terrible to hear a woman in her 50s say she had always found young boys attractive. But when she said it, she showed a lot of emotion. It was like she knew it was wrong, but she couldn't control it. I think this is why she had a pass from most of the inmates. Until one day something happened. Our prison was a little nicer than others. We had computer time once a month, which is unheard of. However, it is supervised. The computers are restricted and a lot older than you might think. One of the other inmates noticed over time we went in there with her. She seemed to get some time to herself. The guard that was in there would leave for like 15 minutes. Almost every time we were in there. Eventually we waited for the guard to leave, and that is when we went to ask her how she bribed the guard to give her some time alone. Honestly, we were just amazed that she was able to work the system this way. As we approached her, we could see it on her computer screen. Pictures of naked boys. This sick and twisted person not only bribed the guard to leave, but was able to sneak in a USB drive with pictures of naked boys on it. The girls I was with got loud and she began very quiet and defensive. She seemed like she was about to cry as the guard walked back into the room to stop the beating that was about to happen. The guard was forced to take that USB drive and file a report. This was going to put her in even more trouble. Unfortunate, or maybe fortunately, she never made it to the court hearing. Justice prevailed and the inmates took the law into their own hands. Edit. Okay, chill. You want the details. She actually managed to get through a day a bit before anything happened. As we all were supposed to go back to our cell, a few inmates jumped into her cell as the doors locked. The first inmate forced socks in her mouth to limit her screaming. Didn't matter because the second one ended up choking her unconscious. Well, I don't know which one killed her, but that was her last day on Earth.
Imagine this for a second.
Imagine the worst thing you can think of. Now imagine you have all day, every day, to think on those thoughts and come up with even worse things to do. Well, that is what happens to sex offenders.
I spent 12 years serving time for a crime I did not commit.
When I was a senior in high school, I committed a sex offense against a 12-year-old girl. I knew her from school, very small school, 7th, 12th grade, combined in one building, study halls, etc. I don't think specifics are necessary, however there was no physical force, violence, or threat of used during my offense. I was initially given a state sentence with a little jail time to serve. With a plea agreement that I'd be on probation for 15 years, and follow all of the terms, which included attending sex offender treatment along with your typical no substance use, no contact with minors, etc. As a stupid, adult teenager, I didn't know how deep of trouble I had gotten myself into, so I didn't take the initial sentencing seriously, and when I was released from jail, continued to have contact with minors. Half my friends were still 17, for example, so I justified that being okay, and other things that were violations of my probation agreement like smoking weed. This, along with my inability to really do any kind of meaningful work during my sessions at sex offender treatment, led to an eventual execution of my full 144-month, 12-year sentence, which was a shock, to say the least. My time incarcerated was split almost 50-50 between state-run facilities and a private prison. Both had their ups, both had their downs. My final 3 years I participated in sex offender treatment in prison, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Some form of group therapy, classes, or individual sessions with a psychologist. A lot of lights came on for me in treatment, and I spent a good deal of time learning about myself and how I've impacted other people in their lifestyles. I think I really embraced the opportunity to make myself a better person, as much as I could, and still use a lot of the tools I learned in there, in my everyday life. I served 7.5 years, good behavior, time served, and then another 5 years on parole. Parole and probation are two entirely different things, BTW. Even though I graduated treatment in prison, I was still required to attend treatment when I was released. I showed them all the work I had done while in prison, and was recommended for aftercare, fast track, to completion. I had to take polygraphs to prove my written sexual histories didn't contain any more forms of victimization or any other offenses I hadn't admitted to, as well as to confirm truthfulness in sexual fantasies and attractions, etc. Finally, last year, I was finished with my sentence. I'm still registered on my state's predatory offender registry, and will be, for life, but I am officially no longer incarcerated or on supervision. I even managed to get registered to vote in time for last year's midterms. Sorry for the wall of text.